Welcome to the Galactic Military Academy on Asteroid Station Aegis 7, where dreams come to die and drill instructors come to feast on the tears of the weak. If you're expecting some fancy space university with floating holographic textbooks and gourmet alien cuisine, you're in the wrong place. This is boot camp for the galaxy's finest, which means it's basically a rock in space designed to break you into tiny, manageable pieces. Meet Luna Morrison, call sign Tiny, though not because she was particularly small by human standards. No, she earned that nickname the hard way, by being the only cadet who could fit inside a maintenance shaft during her first week when the station's life support decided to take a coffee break. At 5'4" and maybe 120 pounds soaking wet, Luna looked like a strong breeze could knock her into the next solar system. Surrounded by 8-foot-tall saurians, crystalline Vorthax who could bench press a shuttlecraft, and Ursoids built like walking mountains, she might as well have been a house cat in a den of tigers. Enter drill instructor Krax, a reptilian nightmare who stood 9 feet tall in his combat boots and had teeth that could open a can of space rations. Krax was what happened when evolution decided that regular dinosaurs weren't terrifying enough and needed military training. His scales were battle-scarred, his voice could shatter reinforced glass, and his idea of a warm welcome was making cadets do push-ups until they could taste their own spine. Well, Krax hissed on Luna's first day, circling her like a predator sizing up lunch. What do we have here? Did someone order takeout and forget to pick it up? The other cadets snickered. Luna stood at attention, eyes forward, trying not to think about how Krax's breath smelled like he'd been gargling with battery acid. I asked you a question, meat, Krax bellowed, spraying spittle that could probably etch metal. Cadet Morrison reporting for duty, sir, Luna replied, her voice steady, despite the fact that her knees were doing their best impression of a leaf in a hurricane. Cadet Morrison, Krax repeated, his forked tongue tasting the words like they were personally offensive to him. Tell me, Morrison, what exactly makes you think you belong here with real warriors? Luna had prepared for this question. She'd practiced in the mirror, rehearsed with her family, even run through scenarios with her guidance counselor back on Earth. What came out of her mouth was none of those carefully crafted responses. Well, sir, I figured someone had to be the comic relief. The training yard went so quiet you could hear a pin drop in the vacuum of space. Krax's eyes narrowed to slits that could have cut through hull plating. Comic relief, he repeated slowly like he was learning a new language. Outstanding. I love comedy, Morrison. In fact, why don't you entertain us with your first joke? 20 laps around the obstacle course. If you're not back in 10 minutes, we'll all assume the punchline was you getting spaced through an airlock. Luna looked at the obstacle course, a twisted maze of death traps that looked like it had been designed by someone who really hated the concept of survival. Then she looked at Krax's expectant grin, full of teeth that belonged in a museum of prehistoric nightmares. Yes, sir, she said, and started running. Behind her, she could hear the whispered conversations of the other cadets, placing bets on whether she'd make it past the plasma field without crying. The smart money was on no. What none of them knew, including Luna herself, was that hidden in the depths of Aegis 7 was a vault full of weapons that had been waiting 20,000 years for the right person to find them. Weapons that belonged to a race called the Architects, who had vanished from the galaxy so completely that most species thought they were mythology. Weapons that no living being had ever been able to touch. Yet. If Luna thought day 1 was rough, day 2 decided to take notes and show off. Krax had apparently spent the night dreaming up new and creative ways to make her existence miserable, which was impressive considering most people use their sleep for actual rest. Morrison! Krax's voice cracked across the training bay like a whip made of pure irritation. Front and center. Today we're going to demonstrate proper form for hand-to-hand combat. Luna jogged over, trying not to notice how the other cadets were already forming a circle like they expected to see a gladiator match. This was going to go about as well as a chocolate teapot in a plasma furnace. Meet your sparring partner, Krax announced, gesturing to a cadet who looked like he'd been carved out of a mountain and then given anger management issues. This was Thok, a saurian who made Crax look like someone's friendly neighborhood pet iguana. Sir," Luna ventured, craning her neck to look up at Thok's face, which was somewhere in the general vicinity of low Earth orbit. "Are you sure this is a fair match?" "Fair?" Crax laughed, a sound like grinding gears in a garbage disposal. "Morrison, the enemy doesn't care about fair. The enemy cares about turning you into a small, scattered collection of organic compounds. Now show me what humans call fighting." What humans called fighting, it turned out, was apparently an interpretive dance about defeat. Luna managed exactly 3 moves before Thok picked her up like a troublesome house cat and gently placed her on the ground outside the sparring circle. "Again," Crax ordered. This time Luna lasted 4 moves, mostly because Thok seemed to be taking pity on her and moving in slow motion. Again. 5 moves. Thok was definitely holding back now. Again! This went on for what felt like several geological epochs, until Luna was pretty sure she'd discovered muscles she didn't know she had, and they were all filing formal complaints. The other cadets had stopped watching and started taking bets on whether she'd survive the week. Among the spectators were her unlikely friends, Buzz, a klaxon who looked like what would happen if a praying mantis decided to become an overachieving gym teacher, buzzed excitedly every time Luna got back up. His species had approximately 17 different words for enthusiasm, and he seemed determined to use all of them. "Excellent fighting spirit," Buzz chittered, his compound eyes gleaming. "Very admirable persistence in the face of inevitable crushing defeat." Then there was Tank, an Ursoid whose name was either the galaxy's greatest understatement or its most accurate description. Tank stood 8 feet tall, was roughly as wide as a small shuttle, and had the gentle demeanor of someone who could arm wrestle a black hole but would rather give you a hug. He watched Luna's repeated defeats with the kind of expression usually reserved for watching someone kick a puppy. "This seems unnecessarily mean," Tank rumbled in a voice like distant thunder. "Perhaps the human could try combat against someone more her size." "What size would that be?" Crax snapped. "A particularly aggressive housefly?" After the sparring disaster came weapons training, where Luna discovered that plasma rifles were apparently calibrated for people with 3-foot arm spans and grips designed for claws. Then came physical conditioning, where she learned that what other species considered a light warm-up, humans considered cruel and unusual punishment. Finally, mercifully, came tactical simulations, where Luna could sit in a chair and use her brain instead of her increasingly battered body. Here, finally, she excelled. While other cadets were still trying to figure out which end of the holographic battlefield was up, Luna was orchestrating complex multi-front strategies that left even Crax grudgingly impressed. Crax admitted after Luna's tactical team had just demolished the enemy in a simulated orbital defense scenario. "It seems the human brain is occasionally useful for something other than keeping the skull from collapsing." It was the closest thing to a compliment Luna had received in weeks. She treasured it like a small, precious insult. But Crax wasn't done with her yet. That afternoon he announced a special motivational exercise that sounded about as motivational as a tax audit. "Tomorrow," he proclaimed, "we're going to run the full obstacle course. Anyone who can't complete it in the allotted time gets to experience the joy of finding a new career path. Far, far away from here." Luna looked at the obstacle course again. It hadn't gotten any friendlier overnight. If anything, it seemed to be actively glaring at her. "Oh, good," she muttered under her breath. "I was running out of ways to humiliate myself." Tank, who was standing nearby, leaned down to whisper, "Perhaps you could hide in one of the obstacles until everyone forgets about you." "That's your plan for everything, Tank." "It has never failed me yet." Luna had to admit, it was tempting, but somewhere deep down, in the part of her that had decided joining the galactic military was a good idea in the first place, she knew she couldn't give up. Not yet. Even if every rational cell in her body was screaming at her to catch the next transport back to Earth and take up a nice, safe career in something reasonable, like volcano photography or professional shark wrestling. Unable to sleep after another day of spectacular failure, Luna found herself wandering the corridors of Aegis 7 at dark 30, when the only sounds were the gentle hum of life support and the occasional snore from Tank's quarters that could probably register on seismic equipment. The Academy's archives were technically off-limits to cadets after hours, but Luna had discovered that security systems designed by committee had approximately the same effectiveness as a chocolate space helmet. A few carefully bypassed sensors later, she was surrounded by the collected military history of a dozen civilizations, most of which seemed to involve someone getting spectacularly defeated by someone else. Couldn't sleep either? Luna nearly jumped out of her skin, spinning around to find Professor Quinn hovering in the doorway. Quinn was a cetacean, which meant she looked like someone had taken a whale, given it opposable thumbs, and enrolled it in graduate school. She was also the Academy's xenoarchaeology instructor, and the only faculty member who didn't seem to view Luna as an amusing science experiment gone wrong. "Just doing some light reading," Luna said, gesturing at the holographic display she'd been studying. "You know, trying to figure out why every species in the galaxy seems better at this military thing than humans." Quinn's massive form settled into a chair designed for someone roughly her size, which was to say built like furniture for giants. But that's where you're wrong, young cadet. Humans aren't worse at the military arts, they're just different. Different how? Different like we're creative with our losing strategies? Different like you're the only species that shares certain genetic markers with the architects. Luna blinked. The who now? The architects, Quinn repeated, her voice taking on the tone professors used when they were about to drop knowledge that would either enlighten you or give you an existential crisis. The precursor race that built most of the ancient technology we still don't understand. They vanished about 20,000 years ago, leaving behind ruins, weapons, and a whole lot of unanswered questions. And they're related to humans somehow? Not related, but similar. Similar in ways that make certain members of the academic community very, very nervous. Quinn gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show star charts, genetic sequences, and what looked like architectural blueprints designed by someone having a fever dream. The architects were builders, Luna, but they were also warriors when they needed to be. They created weapons that could reshape planets, defenses that could stop entire fleets, and technology that still works after 20 millennia of neglect. And then, one day, they just left. Left for where? Nobody knows, but they left their toys behind, locked away in vaults scattered across the galaxy. Vaults that no living species has ever been able to fully access. Luna studied the displays, her tactical mind automatically cataloging patterns and possibilities. There's a vault here, isn't there? On Aegis 7. Quinn's smile was the kind that made Luna think she'd just walked into a trap, but possibly a friendly one. Very good. Yes, there's a vault here. In fact, it's the reason the Academy was built in this location. The Galactic Council thought it would be educational for military cadets to see examples of weapons they could never hope to understand or use. Has anyone ever tried? Oh, dozens of species have tried. The strongest Ursoids, the most brilliant Vorthax, even Saurian war leaders whose combat records span centuries. The weapons won't even acknowledge their presence. Luna leaned back in her chair, processing this information. And you think humans might be different? I think, Quinn said carefully, that tomorrow, when drill instructor Krax assigns you punishment detail for wandering the halls after lights out, you should volunteer to clean the Relic vault. It's educational. How did you know he was going to? Luna, dear child, Krax has been watching you stumble around the Academy for weeks like a predator planning dinner. He's going to find some excuse to punish you. Might as well make it a punishment that teaches you something useful. As if summoned by the conversation, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the corridor. Krax's voice boomed through the archives like the voice of an angry god with digestive issues. Morrison, I know you're in there. Unauthorized access to restricted areas, violation of curfew, and general existence are all punishable offenses. Time to go, Quinn whispered. But remember what I said about the vault. Luna nodded and prepared to face whatever creative punishment Krax had in store. Behind her, the holographic displays flickered with images of ancient weapons and star charts, as if the technology itself was watching her go. In the corridor, Krax loomed like a nightmare in uniform. Well, well, Morrison, It seems you've decided that rules are optional. How wonderfully predictable. Sorry, sir, just couldn't sleep. Couldn't sleep? Outstanding. Since you're so full of energy, you can put it to good use. Starting tomorrow, you're on special detail. You're going to clean the Relic vault every day until it sparkles like the inside of a plasma conduit. Luna tried to look disappointed. Yes, sir. And Morrison, don't touch anything. Those relics are worth more than your entire planet's GDP. If you break something, we'll bill your species for the replacement cost. Understood, sir. As Cracks stomped away, probably to find other sleeping cadets to torment, Luna allowed herself a small smile. Sometimes, she reflected, being punished was the best thing that could happen to you. Even if you had no idea why yet. The Relic Vault was not what Luna had expected. She'd been picturing something like a museum, with neat displays, and helpful placards reading Ancient Death Ray Do Not Touch. Instead, she found herself in what could only be described as the galaxy's most dangerous storage closet. The vault stretched out like an aircraft hangar designed by someone who'd never heard of the concept of organization. Weapons were scattered everywhere, floating in stasis fields, embedded in the walls, hanging from the ceiling like the world's deadliest chandelier. Some were recognizably weapon-shaped. Swords, rifles, things that looked like they could shoot holes in reality. Others defied description entirely, twisted into shapes that hurt to look at directly. Well, Luna muttered, hefting her cleaning supplies, at least they gave me the industrial-strength disinfectant. The first hour was pretty standard as far as punishment details went. Luna wiped down surfaces, vacuumed around the bases of display pedestals, and tried not to think about the fact that any one of these weapons could probably vaporize her if she looked at it wrong. The cleaning was actually kind of meditative, in a terrifying sort of way. That's when things got weird. Luna was dusting off what looked like a crystalline sculpture that might have been art, or might have been a weapon designed to cause existential dread, when her cloth snagged on something. There was a soft click, like a lock opening, and suddenly the vault came alive. Lights that had been dormant for millennia flickered to life. Ancient displays began scrolling with text in a language that looked like mathematics having an argument with poetry. And from somewhere in the depths of the vault came a sound like singing, if singing could be done by the fundamental forces of the universe. "Oh no," Luna whispered. "Oh no, oh no, oh no." She tried to back away from the sculpture, but it was too late. The entire vault was responding to her presence now, systems awakening like a sleeping giant opening its eyes. Weapons that had sat silent for 20,000 years were humming with power. Display cases were opening on their own. And in the center of it all, a holographic figure began to materialize. The figure was tall, slender, and definitely not from any species Luna recognized. It had too many joints in its arms, eyes that seemed to look in several directions at once, and an expression that managed to be both ancient and eternally patient. When it spoke, Luna understood every word, even though she was pretty sure it wasn't speaking any language that existed. "Greetings, Inheritor," the figure said, its voice echoing strangely in the suddenly active space. "Welcome to Arsenal Designation 774. Please state your clearance level." Luna stared at the hologram, her brain trying to process what was happening. She said intelligently. "I don't have clearance, I'm just here to clean." "Genetic scan complete," the figure continued, apparently not listening to her protests. "Human variant detected. Inheritor status confirmed. Full access granted." Wait, what? Inheritor of what? But the hologram was already fading, leaving Luna alone with a vault full of newly awakened ancient technology, which was about when she heard footsteps in the corridor outside. Heavy footsteps, approaching at speed, with what sounded like combat boots designed to intimidate flooring. Tank's face appeared in the vault doorway, his expression shifting from curiosity to awe to what might have been terror. "Luna," he rumbled quietly. "Why are all the weapons glowing?" "I have no idea," Luna whispered back. "I was just cleaning and something clicked and now everything's singing." Tank stepped into the vault, moving with the careful precision of someone who'd suddenly realized he was standing in a room full of armed explosives. "This is not good." "You think?" When ancient weapons start responding to people, it usually means one of two things. Either the person is incredibly lucky, or they're about to become incredibly dead. Which one do you think I am? Tank considered this question with the gravity it deserved. I have always found you to be surprisingly difficult to kill for such a small person. Before Luna could decide whether that was a compliment or an observation, more footsteps echoed in the corridor. These were different footsteps, heavier, more aggressive. The kind of footsteps that belonged to someone who considered personal space a suggestion and pain a hobby. "Morrison!" Crax's voice boomed through the vault like the sound of impending doom with a military education. What in the seven hells of Vorthak Prime is going on in here? Luna and Tank exchanged glances. There was really only one way this could go, and it wasn't going to be pleasant. Luna called out. "I think I might have broken something, sir." Crax appeared in the doorway, took one look at the now active vault with its glowing weapons and singing technology, and his expression shifted through several emotions in rapid succession: surprise, anger, confusion, and what might have been the first stirrings of genuine concern. "Morrison," he said slowly, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Step away from whatever you touched. Very slowly. And Tank, explain to me why you're in here instead of in your quarters where you belong." "I heard strange noises," Tank replied honestly. "I came to investigate." "Strange noises from a vault that hasn't made any sounds for 20,000 years?" "Yes, sir." Crax looked around the vault, taking in the glowing displays, the active weapon systems, and the general air of ancient technology that was very much not supposed to be functioning. His reptilian features settled into an expression Luna had never seen before. It looked suspiciously like fear. "Nobody," he said carefully, "touches anything else. We're sealing this vault and calling the professors. This is officially above my pay grade." But as he spoke, Luna felt something strange. The weapons in the vault weren't just active, they were responding to her specifically. When she moved, they tracked her motion. When she looked at them, their glow intensified slightly. It was like being in a room full of very polite, very dangerous pets. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a voice that sounded like the hologram whispered a single word: home. Luna was beginning to suspect that her punishment detail had just become something much more complicated. Crax didn't seal the vault. Instead, he did what drill instructors throughout the galaxy had been doing since the invention of military hierarchies. He called in the experts and then proceeded to make the situation exponentially worse through the application of pure, stubborn pride. Within hours, the vault was crawling with professors, xeno-archaeologists, and what Luna suspected were probably some very nervous government officials trying to figure out why 20,000 years of dormant technology had suddenly decided to wake up and be sociable. Professor Quinn arrived looking unsurprised, which Luna filed under suspicious but probably helpful. She was followed by a parade of academics who spent a lot of time pointing instruments at things and making worried noises. "Fascinating," muttered Dr. Kellax, a Vorthak researcher whose crystalline form was practically vibrating with excitement. "The quantum resonance patterns are completely stable. It's as if the technology recognizes her genetic signature." "Impossible," declared Professor Vex, a Saurian military historian who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "The architect weapons have never responded to any living species. There must be some kind of malfunction." Luna stood in the middle of the chaos, trying to look innocent while ancient weapons hummed quietly in the background like a technological choir. Every time she moved, the responses became more pronounced. When she'd walked past what looked like a rifle the size of a small tree, it had actually pivoted to track her movement. That's when Crax had his brilliant idea. "You know what?" he announced, his voice carrying the tone of someone about to make a decision that future historians would classify as spectacularly stupid. "I'm tired of theories and speculation. Let's settle this right now." He stalked over to the center of the vault, where a single weapon sat on a raised platform surrounded by warning signs in 17 different languages. The weapon itself was beautiful in the way that hurricanes and supernovas were beautiful. Obviously powerful, definitely dangerous, and probably not something you wanted to get too close to. "This," Crax declared, is the Worldbreaker, the most powerful architect weapon ever discovered. Every great warrior from every major species has tried to lift it. Every one of them has failed. The weapon doesn't just refuse to be moved, it actively repels anyone who tries. Luna looked at the weapon, which looked back at her. Metaphorically speaking, probably. "I'm not sure this is a good idea," she said. "Scared, Morrison?" "Terrified, actually. That thing looks like it could crack a planet in half." "It can," Professor Quinn said helpfully. "According to the historical records, the Worldbreaker was designed as a last resort weapon. It can generate localized gravitational distortions strong enough to shatter continental plates." "And you want me to try to pick it up?" "I want," Crack said, activating his wrist communicator, "to broadcast this galaxy-wide. Let everyone see what happens when a weak little human tries to claim architect technology." Luna felt her stomach drop somewhere into the vicinity of her boots. "You're live-streaming this?" "Oh yes. I've got contacts at the Galactic Military Network. They love this kind of content. Delusional Cadet attempts to lift legendary weapon. It'll get millions of views." Tank stepped forward, his massive form radiating protective concern. "Sir, this seems unnecessarily cruel, even for you." "Cruel?" Crax's laugh was like grinding metal. "Morrison, this is your chance to prove you belong here. If you can lift the Worldbreaker, I'll personally recommend you for officer training. If you can't," he shrugged, "well, at least you'll be famous for 15 minutes before you wash out." Luna looked around the vault. Every eye was on her, from the worried expressions of the professors to Tank's encouraging nod to Buzz's enthusiastic chittering from somewhere near the back. The ancient weapon seemed to pulse gently, like they were waiting for something. "Okay," she said finally, "but if this kills me, I'm haunting all of you." She walked toward the Worldbreaker, acutely aware that she was being broadcast to military academies, government facilities, and probably sports bars across the galaxy. The weapon sat on its platform like it owned the place, which, considering its history, it probably did. Up close, Luna could see that the Worldbreaker was even more beautiful than she'd realized. It looked like someone had taken the concept of elegant destruction and made it physical, all flowing lines and perfect curves that somehow suggested both creation and annihilation. The metal, if it was metal, seemed to shift and flow like liquid while maintaining its solid form. Luna reached out slowly, expecting at any moment to be repelled by whatever force had kept countless warriors at bay. Her fingers touched the weapon's surface. It was warm. And then, as Luna wrapped her hand around the grip, the Worldbreaker lifted effortlessly into the air, as light as a feather and as natural as breathing. The vault went completely silent except for the sound of Professor Vex's crystalline structure cracking from shock. "Well," Luna said, looking at the weapon in her hand, "that was anticlimactic." On the live stream, she could see comments flooding in from across the galaxy. Most of them seemed to consist of variations of "what" and "how," and several that were just strings of symbols that probably represented screaming in various alien languages. Crack stood frozen, his reptilian jaw hanging open wide enough to park a shuttle. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. That's not possible." "Apparently it is," Luna replied, giving the weapon an experimental swing. It moved like an extension of her arm, perfectly balanced and utterly responsive. "Although I have to say the user interface could use some work. Where's the safety?" "There is no safety," Professor Quinn said quietly. "That weapon is designed to respond only to the intent of its wielder. It won't fire unless you truly mean to destroy something." Luna looked at the weapon in her hand, then at Crax's stunned expression, then at the live stream showing her face being broadcast to billions of beings across the galaxy. "So," she said thoughtfully, "I guess this means I passed the obstacle course." Crax's worldview, which had been built on the solid foundation of species hierarchy and the natural superiority of large, aggressive beings over small, seemingly weak ones, crumbled like a sandcastle in a tsunami. "You," he stammered, "you're not weak." "No," Luna agreed, gently placing the Worldbreaker back on its platform, where it settled with a satisfied hum. "I'm just human. We're built different. In the background, Tank was quietly collecting winnings from the various bets placed on Luna's survival. Buzz was chittering something that sounded like applause, and across the galaxy, military strategists were suddenly having very different conversations about humanity's place in the galactic order. Luna, for her part, was just happy she hadn't accidentally broken anything important. Like a planet. 6 months later, graduation day at the Galactic Military Academy dawned bright and cheerful, which was impressive considering they were on an asteroid in the middle of nowhere. The ceremony was being held in the main assembly hall, decorated with the flags of 17 different species and enough military brass to build a small spacecraft. Luna stood at attention with her graduating class, trying not to fidget in her new uniform. The rank insignia on her collar marked her as not just a graduate, but the Academy's first-ever valedictorian from a species that most of the galaxy had previously considered adorably primitive. The Worldbreaker incident, as it had come to be known, had triggered a cascade of revelations that were still rippling through galactic society. Archaeologists had descended on every known architect site, only to discover that human explorers could access chambers and technologies that had remained sealed for millennia. The Galactic Council had hastily convened emergency sessions to discuss the implications of a species that could apparently inherit weapons of mass destruction. And Luna had become the most famous cadet in military history, which was exactly as awkward as it sounded. "I still can't believe they made a holodrama about you," Buzz whispered, his compound eyes gleaming with barely contained excitement. "The Human Who Woke the Stars." Very catchy title, although they took some creative liberties with the love subplot. "There wasn't supposed to be a love subplot," Luna muttered back. "Everyone knows that. But apparently test audiences demanded more romantic tension between you and the mysterious architect Ghost." Tank, standing next to them in his dress uniform that had probably required its own textile factory, rumbled quietly. "I liked the part where they made me 7 feet taller and gave me a tragic backstory about lost love." "You're already 8 feet tall, Tank." "Yes, but now I am cinematically 8 feet tall. There is a difference." The graduation ceremony proceeded with all the pomp and circumstance that military organizations loved. Speeches were given about duty, honor, and the proud tradition of not getting killed in the line of service. Awards were presented to cadets who had excelled in various fields, from tactical simulation to advanced xenobiology. And then came the moment Luna had been both anticipating and dreading. "Cadet Luna Morrison," Admiral Corvex announced, his forearms managing the ceremonial presentation with practiced ease. "Step forward." Luna marched to the podium, acutely aware that this ceremony was being broadcast live across the galaxy. Again. She was really getting tired of being on galactic television. "Cadet Morrison," the Admiral continued, "in recognition of your exceptional service, unique qualifications, and your unprecedented ability to interface with architect technology, you are hereby commissioned as a lieutenant in the Galactic Defense Force, with special assignment to the newly formed Archaeological Recovery Division." The audience applauded, which sounded like a variety of different species' ideas of appreciation, all happening simultaneously. Luna accepted her commission and tried to look dignified while internally wondering what the Archaeological Recovery Division actually did. That question was answered when a familiar reptilian figure stepped forward. "Lieutenant Morrison," Drill Instructor Crack said, his voice carrying none of its old menace. In fact, he sounded almost respectful. "I've been assigned as your senior non-commissioned officer for the ARD, if you'll have me." Luna looked at Cracks, remembering all the punishment details, the impossible obstacle courses, and the constant stream of creative insults. She also remembered his stunned expression when she'd lifted the Worldbreaker, and the way he'd spent the following months treating her like a ticking bomb that might accidentally level a city if startled. "Cracks," she said finally, "you spent 6 months trying to make me quit." "Yes, sir. You called me weak, pathetic, and a waste of perfectly good oxygen." "Yes, sir. I was wrong, sir. You live-streamed what you thought would be my humiliating failure to the entire galaxy." Crax's scales shifted color slightly, which Luna had learned was the saurian equivalent of blushing. "Yes, sir. That was poorly considered." Luna studied his expression, seeing genuine regret mixed with something that looked like awe, and possibly terror. "Why do you want to serve under my command?" "Because," Crax said quietly. "I've spent my entire career thinking I understood what strength looked like. I thought it was size, aggression, the ability to intimidate and overpower. But you taught me something, Lieutenant. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone underestimates." He straightened to his full 9-foot height. "I want to learn how to see strength the way you do, and I want to make sure that when we encounter more architect technology, someone's watching your back who understands just how dangerous you really are." Luna felt a smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. "All right, Senior Sergeant Crax, you're hired, but I have conditions." "Yes, sir?" "No more calling people meat. No more impossible obstacle courses, and absolutely no more live streaming without permission." "Understood, sir. And Crax, next time you want to test whether someone can handle ancient weapons of mass destruction, maybe start with something smaller, like a pen." "Yes, sir. Noted for future reference, sir." Admiral Corvex cleared his throat, reminding everyone that there was still a ceremony in progress. "Lieutenant Morrison, your first assignment is to investigate a recently discovered architect facility in the Centauri system. Intelligence suggests it may contain a complete star map of the galaxy from 20,000 years ago." "Understood, sir. You'll be taking a small team. I believe you've already selected your personnel?" Luna looked out at the assembled crowd and spotted Tank and Buzz trying to look professional, while obviously hoping to be chosen. "Yes, sir. I'll need Sergeant Tank for heavy support and Specialist Buzz for technical analysis." "Excellent. You ship out next week. Try not to accidentally activate any doomsday weapons." "I'll do my best, sir." As the ceremony concluded and the crowd began to disperse, Luna found herself standing with her new team, looking out through the Academy's main viewport at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there were ruins and technologies that had been waiting for 20,000 years for the right people to find them. "So," Tank rumbled thoughtfully, "we're going to be professional archaeologists now?" "Archaeological recovery specialists," Buzz corrected, practically vibrating with excitement. "Very different, much more likely to involve explosions and running for our lives." "Comforting," Luna said dryly. She turned to Crax, who was standing at attention with the kind of rigid posture that suggested he was still getting used to the idea of taking orders from someone he could probably use as a toothpick. "Any thoughts, Senior Sergeant?" "Just one, sir," Crax replied, his reptilian features settling into something that might have been a smile. The galaxy spent 20,000 years thinking the architects were gone forever. Turns out they were just waiting for the right species to grow up enough to inherit their toys. Luna looked back out at the stars, where ancient mysteries waited to be solved and technologies beyond imagination lay dormant in the dark. "Well then," she said, feeling the weight of her new commission and the strange destiny that had brought her from failed obstacle courses to wielding weapons that could reshape worlds. "I guess we'd better not keep them waiting any longer." Behind them, the relic vault hummed quietly with the contentment of weapons finally finding their purpose, and across the galaxy, other vaults began to stir, as if responding to some signal that traveled faster than light and whispered a single word into the cosmic dark. "Welcome home." The greatest strength, Luna reflected, had always been the kind that nobody saw coming until it was too late. And humanity, it seemed, had been keeping that particular secret for 20,000 years. Time to see what other surprises they'd left lying around the galaxy. After all, somebody had to clean up the mess,